Welcome back to another episode of I'm Not Selling You Anything. I'm joined by my co-host, John Festejo, CEO and co-founder of Sales Bricks, and our guest and mutual friend, Brent Holloway. He is the CRO and founder of SaaS Sales Advisors and also an LP at Stage 2 Capital. Brent, how you doing?
Good to see you, Brian. Good to see you, John.
John, I like the succulents behind you. Are those real?
I come to the office every day just to water them.
So they're not going to be living very long. I got a green thumb. Okay, cool. Brenton, we'd love to hear what your superhero origin story, your superhero moment was. You looked at the world one day, something happened, and from then on, you looked at the world completely differently. What do you got for us?
So in 2012, there was a kind of a pivotal meeting in my career. My manager, Ingrid, at the time, we had an opportunity to take over a large group at HP Enterprise Security that was coming together. And so I remember very specifically preparing for this presentation. We knew it was going to be pivotal in our career growth. So we met with a very senior person at HP. He had thousands of people in his organization. He was on the East Coast, and the only time he could meet was 9 a.m. Eastern time. So here we are at 6 a.m, presenting this plan we had put together that basically explained why they should adopt our inside sales and SMB model across a much broader part of HP. And fortunately, we were effective. And because we presented it, there was plenty of other qualified people that could have done it. But that was my first second line sales leadership opportunity. And I was a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. And we had a lot of growth thereafter, and it was a lot of fun. So that was really a superhero moment. I don't think of myself as a hero at all, but that was a good moment for me.
You realize that I could probably do this at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the nerves come in, right? Like I'm taking on a lot of responsibility here, more people to ensure that I help make them successful. I felt the weight of pressure, but we stepped up to the challenge and we did really well. We grew a lot. We hired a lot of people. We promoted a lot of people. It was an exciting time in my career.
It seems like you've kept stepping it up. What do you do when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused? What do you do to get yourself back into the zone?
Yeah, typically in the afternoon, if I'm stressed out or just, need a little moment to relax, my wife and I will walk the dog. We do that about once a day. At the moment, we don't have an English Mastiff, but we've had 2 English Mastiffs over the last 20 years. We've been married almost 22 years now.
Aren't those huge?
Yeah, so the first one was about 200 pounds. The second one maxed out about 185. So they're gentle giants. They're really great. I can't recommend them enough. We have a rescue right now, and I think he needs a friend. So hopefully we'll get the third Mastiff before long.
What's your Costco bill like with those type of things?
So here's the thing about the food with the Mastiff. When they're puppies, I mean, you get them in 8 weeks and they're like 16 pounds already, right? And then they're 150 pounds by the time they turn 1. They eat like 5 cups per meal 3 times a day. So they eat 15 cups in that peak period when they're like, growing from like 30 to 60 pounds. I mean, you come home from work every day and they're a little bit bigger than they were that morning. It's just enormous growth. But the short answer to your question, Jonathan, a lot when they're puppies and not so much when they're older. They have a slow metabolism. So it's not really different than any other dog.
Or a hyperscale startup with that is growing nonstop in that first year.
I'll send you a picture, Brian, but I've used pictures of like the puppy at 16 pounds, the big dog at 200 pounds. In 1 year. And like, that's our growth this year, team. Like, this is what our growth in sales is going to look like.
What is an absurd or unusual thing that you like to do? What makes you weird?
There's a lot to choose from there. Like a lot of sales leaders in business to business software, we work long hours, but I try to do something dumb at least once a year.
Say dumb?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do something dumb to get away from the madness and the stress of a high pressure job. So let's see. I've competed in 3 Red Bull Flugtag events. Where you create a homemade flying device and fly it off of a pier. We won 2 of those in San Francisco. That was a lot of fun. I wasn't brave enough to be the pilot, but I was on the team and I, was the instigator of launching my friends off the pier.
What do people wear in these competitions?
Well, you're encouraged to be creative. I think that's part of the scoring that goes into it. I went once as Ali G because I'm a big Sacha Baron Cohen fan, but for the next one, I have a sumo outfit. So I'm prepared.
So as far as sales productivity and sales efficiency, there's a lot of change going on right now, and a lot of it is not necessarily positive. I think Bridge Group, it's telling us that win rates these days are down from 23% to 19%. And that's over the last 2 years. Sales cycles are getting longer. It's going to take, I see that it takes 4 to 5 times as many touch points just to get a deal done these days. The Bridge Group also reported that the percentage of AEs that are making quota dropped from 66% to 51%. What do you think, Brent? Does that sound high still?
Yeah, that does sound high to me. I'm talking to sales leaders every day, some at really good companies that you would recognize, and they're telling me that it's more like 30% of their AEs exceeding quota. So 51%, it doesn't sound great, but it might even be higher than reality these days, especially in the first half of this year, the numbers are down.
What are you proposing as a solution? What is the salve for any of this that's going on? What are the things that you're suggesting to these leaders to get across to their organizations?
Yeah, a couple things. So there's certainly an efficiency squeeze on these revenue leaders, right? They need to do more with less. But when they're hiring incremental salespeople and not providing any incremental support, I think that's a recipe for failing. As an example, if they're reducing their BDR coverage from, let's say, 1 to 3 to 1 to 6, or they're putting a lot of pressure on the AEs, and it's probably not a realistic model for them to achieve $1 million quota if they're going to be responsible for producing 70, 80% or more of that pipeline on their own. The term that I've heard get thrown around a few times is that the AEs are turning into $250,000 plus BDRs because they're doing all of their own pipeline gen. So I'd say that the first point there is just to ensure that there's still a reasonable investment being made in marketing and BDR support for the AEs, so they're not taking on all of the pressure on their own. The other area that I've seen be successful is a better, deeper focus on the ideal customer profile at a quantified level. So really understanding where do they have efficient sales cycles? Where are they getting enough juice for the squeeze, so to speak, so that they're being efficient. And especially in the SMB segments, I've been on a lot of forecast calls where, you're listening and after a couple of minutes to a deal review, there's a POV and a lot of back and forth going on for something that's going to produce $9,000 at the end of the day. So I think you got to take a quantified approach to that and figure out where you set the bar to determine where you can do a proof of value as one example. We found that companies that are growing, especially in the department for the technology that we're selling, was a strong signal to determine whether or not you were going to get a profitable outcome on those sales cycles.
So Brent, you mentioned that, and I completely agree. We at SalesBricks also are starting to emphasize the growth of the company and using that as an indication that we should spend more time prospecting and selling into. What do you typically advise to look at? Is it hiring?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. One is with LinkedIn, you can see the growth rate of the business as well as the individual departments that may be relevant to whatever solution you're selling. I think Open Recs is a great thing to look for. So as an example, if you sell a development tool that helps improve the efficiency of their development organization, you might pitch the opportunity for them to repurpose one of those open requisitions towards your solution, which may cost less than the person that they're otherwise going to hire. And so there's an immediate hard dollar ROI there that they can, again, use pre-budgeted money towards in a different way. And if your solution is going to improve the productivity of that organization by at least a few percentage points, that might have a bigger, better impact to the business than that one person would have had. So, we've used positioning like that, and it doesn't always work, of course, but it can work.
John, when you're having conversations with folks that you're either looking to do business with or they're looking to do business with you, how does SalesBricks have a fit in there?
For us, one thing that we position on is in order for you to grow your business, you need a lot of these tools to make a lot of your sellers better spend their time on particular parts of their business. And for us, we sell to the sales organizations. And if you think about the jobs to be done for a seller, about 70% of that job is back office stuff. And for us, what we say is hey, even if you have 1 or 2 reps and you might be 1 or 2 reps for a very long time, that 70 to 80% of time that they spend on quoting, going back and forth, managing billing, trying to get the customer to pay them, that's stuff that SalesBricks could do automatically. And so rather than hiring 5 more sales reps to get to that productivity, we actually ask them, hey, stop having your sellers do these things so that they could be 90% focused on the outbounding, the prospecting, and then only 10% kind of in the back office busy work. And so regardless of you selling or growing really fast, with what you got today and what you plan on keeping the team as, we can make you so much more productive. So those are the kind of things that we're seeing and we're kind of positioning when we go out there and talking about SalesBricks.
Something that I see here, Brett, I saw it earlier. A couple of weeks ago, you posted on LinkedIn about maximizing the opportunities within the customer base. Do you think that's something that we could dig into a little bit more?
Yeah, sure, Brian. Over the years, we've refined an approach to engaging with customers that is ensuring their success while at the same time optimizing the opportunity for upsell and cross-sell. So as one simple example, over the last several years, I've had a mandate for my team to engage with each customer at least once a quarter in a very specific approach. It's an account review, takes about an hour, and it
Okay.
starts with just ensuring that the customer is doing well. And of course, if there's any issues that haven't already been opened, you escalate those and make sure that you get those addressed. If they're happy, then ask them to be a case study, ask them to be a reference, but make sure you spend at least 5 or 10 minutes at the start of the call, really understanding how successful they are with your solution. Part 2 is digging into what are their upcoming initiatives for the next, we'll call it 1 to 24 months. And not going surface level, but double clicking and finding out how does that align with corporate initiatives and who cares? Have they quantified the value of these initiatives? So that's ideally a 20 to 30 minute discussion about what's going on in their business, hopefully relevant to the areas where you might be able to help them solve some of those challenges. And then part 3 is presumably you work for an innovative company. A lot has changed on a quarterly basis. So it's an opportunity for you to share updates about your business and your solution. And when you tie points 2 and 3 together, aligning what's new about your business or what they may not know and initiatives they have coming up, it's a great pipeline generation event, right? Like half of these calls typically end up with some form of a new opportunity that comes out of it. And you're going to learn a lot about what's going on in their business. And ideally, you've got something in either your existing product set or what's coming up on the product roadmap that aligns with what's important to them. So, I mean, literally, I think about half of these calls should end up in some form of an incremental opportunity that you didn't know about going into the call. And if you're an AE with, say, 13 accounts that you look after, it's only 1 hour a week, right? If you average that out over the course of a quarter. If you have 26 customers, that's 2 hours a week. So it's a really great use of your time. And again, a very effective way to identify not just new pipeline, but pipeline that on average has higher win rates and faster sales cycles.
John, is that something that you can see yourself or you've done in the past?
Brent brings up some really good talking points and ideas. I'm actually going to respond to that as a customer. So, as a sales ops and go-to-market ops leader, and also as a CEO of a company, you buy a bunch of tools. And sometimes you buy the tools because somebody told you it's the best in class product out there. And there's sometimes where you buy something, it's like I'm betting on the people who are building the product and listening to the customer, and then eventually building a solution that grows with me in the future of what I'm building. I love having conversations with our vendors where they're understanding what's my challenge today, what's my challenge tomorrow, what are the timing of these kind of initiatives for our business, and how does it align to what they have currently on the shelf versus like, what are things I'm actually using properly in the product? And so I might be using another solution to solve this problem, but actually the product that I already bought has that feature or functionality that I could just consolidate the tooling. Not only does it build relationships with vendors, it also gives them an opportunity to get the cheat sheet notes around what the tests will evolve into. And so I'm fine with spending more money if the vendors that we use are solving those particular problems that's popping up in my business. So in a way, I would love these QBRs and the things that Brent was mentioning, because it helps me be a little bit more at ease as we're growing as a company, and knowing that our vendors is hearing us out, understanding our problems, and evolving the product to really better suit us and where we need to be in the future as well.
Do you think that's unique, John, or is that the minority, or do the very good founders, the very good operators, is that how they have to think about it?
I have a very strong opinion about this. I was a early customer of a company called Domo.
Yeah.
And they were very good at listening to customers. In fact, it kind of helped their roadmap a lot. And I was a very needy customer because I had a very needy boss. And the things that I had to go do and perform in the early days of my career is a lot of work. And so, Domo had the opportunity to ask me a bunch of questions like, what are you doing in your career as you got the promotion? Like, what are you now overseeing in terms of analytics? And I'm saying, hey, I'm managing HR analytics for God's sake. Like I'm a sales guy, like a sales ops guy. And they're like, yeah, I'd love to build out these integrations so that when you have an e-staff call, you're not only looking at sales and marketing data, but you're also looking at like HR data, like how many people in your headcount, like in the entire org or entire company. What are some of the, data points that, CEO looks at on a weekly basis? And so they were building the product based on the things that we were doing and we were growing into. And for that reason, it probably helped, 80% of their future prospects. And so I think one thing that we don't do well in B2B SaaS is be very strict and give, customers and buyers this, like, this is what a great customer looks like. And it's having that relationship. It's talking about the things that they're challenged with today and in the future that will help their vendors build amazing product. I think Datadog does a really great job of that. I think Domo does a really great job of that. And those companies will have a higher probability of success.
I don't think we really talked too much about ICP by segment at all in your answer earlier, Brent.
I probably should have mentioned that, ICPs are not a one size fits all, at least in my experience. When you analyze it and you measure it, the criteria for what is an ICP for the SMB segment might be very different than the characteristics for mid-market and for enterprise and so on. So, I would recommend taking a granular approach to determining what the ICP is and not assuming a one size fits all.
So what you're saying is the way that you come up with the ICP for SMB is going to be different if the way you come up with an ICP for enterprise.
Approach to determining what they are is similar, but the outcome is likely different. So as an example, if you take hundreds or preferably thousands of rows of win-loss data over the last couple of years, and you look for common characteristics of what produces a profitable sales cycle, you're likely to find different industries, different company growth rates, other criteria, different incumbents, different primary competitors in the SMB segment versus mid-market versus enterprise. So if you ask a company, what is your ICP? And they say, oh, it's finance and healthcare. Well, that might be true for one segment. It's probably not optimized for each segment of their business. There's typically more criteria that you want to know about your ICP to determine what makes your most profitable sales cycles.
Now, I feel like this is obviously something that's very, your eyes light up when you start talking about this.
A quick plug for a solution I'm developing. My primary business is being an advisor and a consultant for startup companies, people like John, who raised at least a seed round and helping them scale their go-to-market faster and more efficiently. But I'm now looking at being yet another software vendor myself. So I am developing a solution. I'm partnering with a friend from Talent who's got a master's in mathematics, and he's doing a lot of the work that lives in Snowflake, and we're going to put a nice Tableau front end on it. And it is all about ideal customer profiles by segment. So we're going to try to help companies solve that problem in a way that's relatively easy and efficient.
So just kind of switching in topics a little bit, things that I've been seeing out there in the B2B world, deal shaping. When people go and get those first big wins in, how those wins come about and how to replicate them. It's not usually just here's the price and they pay it. There's a lot more that goes into it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Right on the enterprise side, I know you've done a lot of that work. And John also, with kind of the people that we're talking to today.
So Brian, I have the opportunity to understand what's working and not working with a bunch of our, early stage customers here at SalesBricks. And reeling in those big whales is actually the byproduct of listening to the customer. So the customer is going through financial situations and uniqueness. Maybe they're not quite ready to buy now, but will be in 3 months, but you want to take that off the table. It's all about listening. It's like, what is your financial limitations? What is your budget limitations? How many headcount do you have today versus 6 months from now? And crafting a large transaction that makes the client look really good. And so for us, like shamelessly, we help power the deal shaping part of the sales process, where you can ask these questions of your customers, and with just a few clicks of a button, you're deal shaping the contract in front of you. And you see the implications of cash flow, you see the implications of the budget and the timing. And it helps posture the sellers to be able to prove to the client that they've listened and they've heard them, and that they were able to craft something uniquely that aligns to them. And so big whales is not like, hey, I'm ready to go buy, I need 500 licenses, I'm okay with list price. It's far removed from that. And a lot of customers out there, buyers at least, they generally have these limitations. And so if you listen to them, you work with them, you meet in the middle, you're able to win these big whales.
So John, I think that was really well said. I love this topic of deal shaping. It's about getting creative, and to your point, aligning with the needs of the business and sometimes doing creative things that still make it a win-win outcome. So I'll share a brief story here. This was the end of January, which was the end of the fiscal year 23 for my last company. And we had a prospect that was using another solution and still had 6 months left on their agreement, but they wanted to change out of it. They wanted our technology. And so long story short, we came up with this 18-month term for the price of 12. We structured it so that the cash flow was roughly the same as what they otherwise would have paid for the renewal of the other technology. We got a big win. The AE on my team makes his annual number with 1 day to go and 1% over his annual quota. So it was really fun. Like, it was exciting and it was deal shaping, and it created a win-win outcome. So I think there's a million scenarios like that if you, to John's point, understand what are the constraints and the concerns of the customer and shape your deal accordingly, you can find a win-win outcome.
Not that easy, like to just have that intuition of deal shaping. Working with people who have had all these losses before and it got personal, and understanding what could I have done better to close the deal. So like folks like Brent, who's been on the bench playing the game for the last 20 years, learned a thing or two of like how to listen and how to deal shape. And so, I love what he's doing with a lot of the early stage startups and providing that transfer of wisdom where you don't have to go through 100 losses to figure that out, but you could hear a story of wisdom and be able to apply that into your day-to-day business. I think that's fascinating.
Brent, who do you think that we should interview next?
Let me recommend Annika Seeley. She's amazing. She's an author. She's been a software sales advisor for many years. She's got a lot of great stories, like having Mark Benioff as one of her inside reps at Oracle around 1990. So she's super connected. She's really fun. She's really smart, and she would be great.
We asked this question to everyone. It's called the Billboard question. So, Brent, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, everyone would be driving by it every single day to see it on the 101, what would it be?
I love this one. So yeah, for me, it would be smooth seas do not make skilled sailors. This is
Let's hear it.
Phrase that my dad used to share with me when I was going through tough times. And I remember very specifically hearing it in 1998. I was 24 years old at the time. I had been just recently dumped by my girlfriend. I wasn't doing well at work. And here I am, living at home. My parents start charging me rent. But he said, learn from the adversity, get better, keep going. And things turned around for me in 99. I bought my first condo, landed a big deal with Apple, and developed a lot of confidence with that. Learn from adversity and keep going.
That's a really good one. And I'll tell you right now, we haven't had it yet. So thank you so much for that one, Brent. And thanks again to my co-host, John Festejo, for having a conversation about sales productivity, efficiency, some deal shaping, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you, Brian.